He never hit me, but every single day he destroyed something inside me that never healed. People believe abuse has a sound, a bruise, a scream attached to it. But some abuse is quiet. It lives in tone, in silence, in the way a man looks at you and makes you feel like you are already wrong before you even speak. That kind of pain doesn't leave marks on the skin. It settles in the soul and stays there. I am not sharing this to gain sympathy. I am sharing this because there are women listening right now who don't know they're being abused. They think because their husband doesn't raise his hand, they should be grateful. That is what I thought too. Everyone told me I was lucky. You have a good man, they said. He doesn't drink. He doesn't beat you. He provides. And I nodded because I didn't know how to explain that a man can give you everything and still take your life away piece by piece. Before my marriage, I had dreams. Simple ones. I wanted peace. I wanted to learn. I wanted to feel respected. I didn't want much. But slowly, after marriage, my world became very small. My voice became softer. My opinions became dangerous. My happiness became suspicious. Every time I smiled, he asked why. Every time I dressed nicely, he questioned who I was trying to impress. And when I stopped doing those things, he told me I was dull, lifeless, boring. He never shouted. That was the worst part. He spoke calmly, while crushing me. "You're too sensitive," he would say. "You imagine things. Any other man would have left you by now." He made me doubt my own mind. I started apologizing for things I didn't do. I started explaining myself even when I was silent. I started believing that maybe I really was the problem. Days passed. Years passed. I stopped sharing my thoughts because they were always dismissed. I stopped talking about my feelings because they were always mocked. I stopped asking for affection because he acted like it was a burden. Slowly, I learned how to exist without being seen. I learned how to smile in public and break in private. I learned how to sleep beside a man who made me feel completely alone. What hurt the most was how good he looked to others. People admired him. They praised his patience. They called him a gentleman. And every compliment he received felt like another slap to my invisible wounds. Because if he was so good, then what did that make me? Ungrateful? Weak? Crazy? That question haunted me every night. I remember the day I stopped crying. That day scared me more than all the others. Tears mean you still feel something. But I felt empty. I moved through life like a shadow. Cooking, cleaning, obeying, surviving. I forgot what laughter sounded like. I forgot what confidence felt like. I forgot who I was before him. Sometimes he would be kind, just enough to confuse me. Just enough to make me stay. That is how emotional abuse works. It doesn't push you away. It pulls you back just when you're about to leave. And you keep hoping that the man you married will finally show up. But he never does. I stayed longer than I should have because society teaches women to endure, not escape. Because I was told a broken marriage is worse than a broken woman. Because I believed silence was strength. Until one day, I realized something painful. I was alive, but I was not living. And a man doesn't have to hit you to kill you slowly. If you are listening to this and your heart feels heavy, If you feel smaller every day, if you question your worth more than your partner questions his behavior, please hear me. Love does not erase you. Marriage is not supposed to feel like a prison. And abuse does not need bruises to be real. I survived. But survival is not the same as living. And no woman should have to lose herself just to keep a man comfortable. There were days I tried to remember the woman I used to be, but her face felt unfamiliar. I would stand in the kitchen, staring at my hands, wondering how someone could be so present and yet feel completely erased. My body was there, my duties were done, but my soul felt like it had packed its bags and left a long time ago. I wasn't sad anymore. I was tired in a way sleep could never fix. He controlled everything without ever giving an order. What I wore, how I spoke, who I met, how long I stayed on the phone. Not by force, but by disappointment, by silence, by that look that said I had failed him again. And the worst part was, I began to police myself. I stopped before he had to stop me. I corrected myself before he had to criticize me. I shrank myself willingly, believing that love required sacrifice, even if that sacrifice was me. Whenever I tried to explain how I felt, he laughed softly and said, "You always make things dramatic." That sentence followed me everywhere. It echoed in my head until I no longer trusted my emotions. If I cried, I felt ashamed. If I felt hurt, I felt guilty. If I wanted more, I felt selfish. He trained me so well that even in my pain, I defended him. I watched other women laugh freely, speak openly, disagree without fear. And I wondered what crime I had committed to deserve a life so quiet and heavy. I told myself this was marriage. This was adulthood. This was what strong women do. They endure. They adjust. They stay silent. No one told me that endurance can slowly turn into self-burial. There were nights I lay awake beside him, staring at the ceiling, imagining what it would feel like to breathe without permission, to speak without being corrected, to exist without being evaluated. He slept peacefully, unaware of the storm inside me, or maybe he was aware and simply didn't care. That realization hurt more than all the others. Sometimes he would apologize, not for hurting me, but for my reaction. "I'm sorry you feel that way," he'd say, and I'd cling to those words like they meant something. I kept hoping he would change. Hope became my cage, because as long as I hoped, I stayed. And as long as I stayed, I disappeared a little more. I stopped calling my family because I didn't know how to explain a pain that had no bruises. I stopped meeting friends because pretending to be happy was exhausting. Loneliness became familiar. Silence became safe. At least silence didn't argue with me. At least silence didn't tell me I was worthless. One day, I looked at my reflection and didn't recognize the woman staring back. Her eyes were dull. Her shoulders were heavy. Her smile felt borrowed. That was the day I realized something terrifying. I had become a stranger to myself, and no one had forced me. I had slowly agreed to my own disappearance. I began to understand that emotional abuse doesn't scream. It whispers. It convinces you that you deserve less. That asking for respect is too much. That wanting love is weakness. And by the time you realize what's happening, you're already too tired to fight. I wish I could say there was one big moment that changed everything. But the truth is, change came quietly. It came in exhaustion, in numbness, in the realization that staying was killing me more than leaving ever could. I wasn't brave yet. I wasn't strong yet. But a small voice inside me started asking a dangerous question. What if this is not love? That question scared me more than anything else, because once you ask it, you can never go back to pretending. The day I finally understood the truth, nothing dramatic happened. No shouting, no fight, no tears at first. I was washing dishes, standing in the same kitchen where I had spent years shrinking myself, when I suddenly felt very tired. Not the kind of tired that sleep fixes, but the kind that comes from carrying pain you were never meant to hold for so long. I realized I could not remember the last time I felt peace. I asked myself a question I had avoided for years. If nothing ever changes, can I survive another 10 years like this? The answer came quietly, but clearly. I could survive, but I would not live. And something inside me broke, not in pain, but in truth. I finally understood that love is not supposed to feel like suffocation. I stopped trying to explain myself to him. I stopped hoping he would suddenly see me. I stopped waiting for permission to exist. The silence between us grew heavier, but for the first time, it did not belong only to me. I had spent years begging to be understood. Now, I was simply done. Leaving was not easy. It did not feel powerful or brave. It felt terrifying. Society does not clap for women who walk away quietly. It questions them, judges them, blames them. I heard the whispers before I even stepped outside. She couldn't adjust. She broke her home. She gave up. But none of them knew how many nights I begged God just to help me breathe. When I finally left, I did not feel happy. I felt empty. Healing does not arrive with fireworks. It arrives slowly, painfully, in moments where you realize how much damage was done. I cried for the woman I used to be. I cried for the years I lost. I cried because I did not recognize myself anymore. But for the first time, my tears were honest. There were days I wanted to go back, not because I missed him, but because loneliness felt loud. Abuse trains you to believe that loneliness is worse than pain. It is not. Loneliness teaches you who you are. Pain teaches you how to disappear. I chose loneliness, and slowly, it stopped feeling scary. I began to rebuild myself in small ways, speaking without apologizing, laughing without fear, sitting in silence without feeling guilty. I learned that peace feels unfamiliar when you've lived in chaos for too long. I learned that healing is not linear. Some days I felt strong. Some days I felt broken all over again. Both were part of becoming whole. I no longer blame myself the way I used to. I understand now that emotional abuse works because it is invisible, because it hides behind respectability, because it convinces women that suffering quietly is strength. It is not. Strength is choosing yourself when the world tells you not to. If you are listening to my story and something inside you aches, please don't ignore it. That ache is not weakness. It is your soul asking to be saved. You do not need bruises to justify your pain. You do not need permission to leave a place that is killing you slowly. Love should never cost you your identity. I am not bitter. I am not angry. I am older now, wiser, and finally honest with myself. He never hit me, but he destroyed me every day. And I survived. Not because I was strong at the beginning, but because I became strong by the end. And if my voice reaches even one woman sitting in silence tonight, wondering if she is imagining her pain, let me tell you this clearly. You are not crazy. You are not ungrateful. And you are not alone. Your life matters. Your voice matters. And it is never too late to choose yourself.